ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मिलितं येन तस्मै श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम् वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरो श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगण रघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगण ललिता श्री विशाखान्वितांश्च नम ओं विष्णुपादाय कृष्णपृष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदांत स्वामिन्निति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्य देशतारिणे हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधु दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा। So welcome back to our Saturday and Sunday evening series on the exploring Raganuga Bhakti. Yesterday in the last class, we had quite an elaborate discussion on what is, firstly, we had this discussion of the destination of those who hate or out of fear absorb their minds in Krishna. Although it is mentioned that they attain the same destination, but there is difference because Brahman, the absolute truth is one, but there is Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. So the demons and the great sages attain Brahman, Brahma Sukha, whereas those who are Prema Bhaktas, they attain the lotus feet of the Lord. So that was mentioned, that those who are Raga Bandena Kenapi, Angri Padma Sudha Prema, they attain the lotus feet of the Lord. And this verse, which Rup Goswami puts as a proof from the personified Vedas, the prayers of the personified Vedas, explains both the destinations of those who are Araya, Api, and the Stri. The Stri Uragrendra refers to the gopis, and they also want the similar mood and affection of the gopis. Oh, let me check 1 second. Hare. The net connection is here pretty good. So I don't know for what reason. Let me try a different. Okay. So let us see. Is it clear? Is it better now? Is the audio better now? Yeah. Okay. Fine. So, so this reference shows that there is, different destinations attained for those who, absorb their minds in Krishna out of fear or hatred, and those out of prema. So this we saw yesterday quite in detail. And then we went into the discussion of Kama Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti. The Kama Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti, which is specially practiced by the gopis of Vrindavan. The definition we saw, and we discussed how this Kama is, pure love, where there is the intense zeal for the happiness of Krishna. And this is found in the Raja Gopis. And this was the Gopi Geet last verse, a verse which personifies that. So we saw this. And then we saw evidence from the Tantra as well as Uddhava's statement about this. Then the Kubja's prema is, Kama Praya. It is, Kama Praya. There is, it is only due to Kama only. But there is Rati also, because, there is a small degree of attraction, because the object of attraction is Krishna. So that was distinguished. And then the Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti, which is found in Vatsalya, Sakya, and Dasya Rasas. So this also yesterday we discussed. And then because this Kama Rupa and Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti is found in the Vrajvasis, and it is caused by prema alone, and it is only found in the Nitya Siddhas, not much is discussed. But with respect to Raganuga Bhakti, Ragatmika Bhakti came into picture, and that's why Rupa Goswami goes into this discussion quite briefly here. But later on in the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, especially the southern division, the western division, and even the northern division, quite detail is gone into, the all these different types of Kamarupa and Sambandharupa Ragatmika Bhakti, which are at highest levels of prema. And there are some other literatures given by Rupa Goswami where he discusses quite in detail. And then this is the last verse we discussed, that from these two types of Ragatmika Bhakti, which is found in Siddha Bhakti, two types of Raganuga Bhakti. Raganuga Bhakti is Sadhana Bhakti, we should remember. It is called as sometimes Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So there are two types of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Kamanuga and Sambandhanuga Bhakti. So here yesterday I did not show you the chart, but here is the chart now. So there are two types of Ragatmika Bhakti. This is Siddha Bhakti. Kama Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti found in the Vraj Gopis in Madhurya Ras. Parakya Ras, Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti found in Vatsalya, Sakya and Dasya Rasas. Nanda Maharaj, Yashoda, the friends of Krishna like Sridhama and Sudhama. And there are the friends who are also servants of Krishna like Raktak and Patrak. So this is found, Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti is found. Now, based on these two types of Ragatmika Bhakti found in the Siddha Bhakti, there are two types of Raganuga Bhakti, that is Sadhana Bhakti. These are sadhakas who follow the Siddhas. One is called as the Kamanuga Bhakti, and other is called as the Sambandhanuga Bhakti. The Kamanuga Bhakti is followed, their mood is to follow the Kama Rupa Ragatmika Bhaktas of Vraja. And the Sambandhanuga, they follow the Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika Bhakti found in Vraj, in Vatsalya, Das and Sakrasas. So that is the, how the division happens. Now within Kamanuga, there are further two subdivisions, and Rupa Goswami will speak about it, and that time we will go into detail. Now, after discussing about this Ragatmika Bhakti, the divisions of Ragatmika Bhakti, scriptural proof and all, now Rupa Goswami comes to the topic of Raganuga Bhakti. And the topic is Adhikar. What is the qualification for practicing Raganuga Bhakti? So, this is the next verse of Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu 1 to 291. Tatra Adhikari. रागात्मिकाये कनिष्ठाये व्रजवासी जनादय तेषां भावतये लुब्ध भवेत् अत्राधिकारिवान्. That person who is greedy. Now, what is this greed? You know, we'll have an elaborate discussion, not in this class, in the next class, coming class. Today, we will see, quite in detail, what is the qualification required for practicing Raganuga Bhakti. And greed is one of the most essential components. So, whether we possess that kind of greed is also one topic which we will be discussing in the next class. But here, just to understand, it is greed. That person who is greedy for attaining a bhava, ye bhava apate lubda, similar to that of the inhabitants of Vraja, Vrajavasi Janadaya. Now this can be in Ragatmika Sambandha Rupa Ragatmika or Kama Rupa, both, who are fixed solely in Ragatmika Bhakti. Ragatmika Ekanishtaye is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti. Atra Adhikarivan Bhavet. So this is the essential criteria. Greed for attaining a bhava similar to the Vrajvasis. This is the first criteria or the first qualification, adhikar, required for practicing Raganuga Bhakti. Having described, this is Vishnu Chakra Thakur, having described the characteristics of Ragatmika Bhakti of the Siddha Bhaktas, the author now describes the characteristics of Raganuga Bhakti of the Sadhakas. He who is greedy to attain a bhava similar to that of the people of Raj, who are fixed in Ragatmika Bhakti, is qualified for Raganuga Bhakti. So this is a short and a brief commentary what Vishnu Chakra Thakur gives. This is just an explanation of the verse. Nothing much is explained. Further in the next verse, Rupa Goswami mentions Tat Tad Bhavadi Madhure Shrute Dhira Yad Apekshate Natra Shastram Na Yuktim Cha Tallobat Lakshanam. The appearance of that greed is indicated. Tad Loba. Loba is again greed. Utpati. Utpati means, arising. The appearance. Here the word is used, appearance means manifesting. Lakshanam. That is the symptom of that appearance of greed. When does that come? When the intelligence does not depend. Yad dhira na apekshate. Dhira means, dhi means intelligence. On what? On the rules of scripture and logic. Shastram cha yuktim cha. So the intelligence doesn't depend on Shastra and Yukti. When after realizing to some degree, not to the full degree, but some degree, the sweetness of Dhyar, inhabitants of Raj, love through the process of hearing from scriptures. Tad bhavadi madhurya shrute. Shrute means hearing from the scriptures. So hearing from the scriptures, an intense greed awakens in the heart, and now the intelligence doesn't, follow the dictates of Shastra and logic to practice bhakti. It follows the dictate of greed. At that time, he has some, he's developed some greed for attaining the same sweetness of how the Vrajvasis worship Krishna. I also want to follow their mood. So this kind of, appearance of greed, when it comes, then he is qualified to practice Raganuga Bhakti. So now let us go more in detail about this. But first, let us see what Jiva Goswami and Vishnu Chakra Thakur have to say about this. Jiva Goswami. When a person realizes to some degree the sweetness of the love and the activities of the inhabitants of Raj through hearing from the scriptures such as Bhagavatam, which describe these Siddha devotees, his intelligence may develop disregard for the injunctions of scriptures and logic, though logic is certainly employed. So this we will clarify today is an elaborate discussion, on this particular topic, that what this whole statement means. To make any sense of scripture, logic must be used to understand the meaning of the statement. It doesn't mean that, Raganuga Bhaktas no more apply logic. When they are studying the Shastra, studying the Bhagavatam, logic is applied. But the impetus to practice bhakti comes to follow in the footsteps of the Ragatmika Bhaktas. As well, where there are contradictions in scripture, logic must be used to bring about conclusion. So Raganuga Bhaktas who become qualified to practice, Raganuga Bhaktas who are qualified now to practice Vaidhi Raganuga Bhakti, they use logic to make sense of the scripture, and when there are contradictions in the scripture, to get the conclusion. But their practice is basically to follow the inhabitants of Vraj. So this is what Jiva Goswami is saying. Now, Vishwanath Chakra Thakur says, one can infer Lakshanam, that greed has arisen in the person from recognizing this symptom. So, Lakshan means symptoms. Nevertheless, it is not possible to say that the condition described is the real essence, swarup of that greed, since that greed does not always include disregard for scriptural injunctions and logic as a necessary component. So here what Vishwanath Chakra Thakur is saying, that greed is basically the qualification, but it doesn't mean that because of greed, he disregards the scriptural injunctions and logic. Even a Raganuga sadhaka, he practices bhakti, and these bhakti is mentioned in the scriptures. So there also he has to use. So this, Shastra and Yukti, depending on the injunctions of the scripture and Yukti is logic, they become byproducts of greed. So the main motivation is Lubdha. Lubdha is greed. So this is what drives him. This is the motivating force for him to impel and go ahead in bhakti, not Shastra or logic. He's not now a Vaidhi Bhakta. Lobh has developed in him. One may also develop greed without showing symptoms of disregard for rules of scripture and logic. So one can develop greed and he might not show symptoms for disregard for rules of scripture and logic. Now let us go into more detail about the qualifications of practicing Raganuga Bhakti. How does this greed develop? The qualification for Raganuga Bhakti. Now, these discussion, what I am doing now, is based on the book called as Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani, where Shivram Maharaj has given, this is by Shivram Maharaj, he is Holiness Shivram Swami Maharaj, who has quite elaborately discussed what is mixed devotion, what is pure devotion, and all these stages of devotion, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, Bhava Bhakti, Prema Bhakti, and how our hearing begins from the stage of Shraddha, and how at the stage of Prema, what are the symptoms of all this. So very systematically in this book, Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani has described. So from this book, we will now discuss, how does this greed develop and what is the qualification. So in chapter 11 of that book, there is spontaneous devotional service in practice, part 1. So we will start discussing from there. Devotional service in spontaneous love is vividly expressed and manifested by the inhabitants of Vrindavan. This we saw. These are Ragatmika Bhaktas, and they are okay. There is one question here. Maybe y'all can raise your hands whenever there is a question, and even if you type, so that I can understand that there is some question. Okay. So let me first take the question and then go to this qualification. Okay. Please explain with an example of applying logic versus contradictions in scripture. So logic in in devotional terminology is called as yukti. It is called as yukti. This means shastric logic, not some mental speculation based on our own, reasoning. That is called as tarka. In Sanskrit, it is called as tarka. So logic here means use of the intelligence, applying the intelligence to understand what the scriptures are speaking and whether I'm able to understand. That is what is called as logic, yukti. Shastra yukti it is called. That is one of the qualifications of a Uttamadhikari who is qualified to practice Vaidhi Bhakti. There are three kinds of adhikaris, which is mentioned in the Sadhana Bhakti. Uh, After the Sadhana Bhakti definition, there is the Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti definition, and there are adhikaris there also. Who can take up Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti? Kanishta, Madhyama, and Uttama. So Uttama's qualification is Shastrayukta Nipuna, Proud Shraddha. He has Shastra Yukta Nipuna. He's very expert in understanding the conclusions of the scriptures. Proud Shraddha has firm faith in the meanings of the scriptures. So this is called as Shastra Yukti. Whereas Munis or mental speculators, they also very sharp in intellect, but they try to, you know, uh, misinterpret the scriptures, or they try to construe the meaning of the scriptures based on their own understanding, based on their own explanation, without solidly grounded in the explanation of Guru, Sadhu, and Shastras. So that is first thing to be understood with respect to logic. Secondly, contradictions in logic. Contradictions in logic, is, to give an example of contradictions, uh, there are different kinds of pramans. There is the pratyaksh praman, there is the anuman praman, and there is the shabd praman. There is also something called as the arthapatti. Arthapatti means arthapatti means like there is a statement, Ravi is growing fat. Ravi does fasting throughout the day. So if you see these two statements, if Ravi is fasting throughout the day, how is that Ravi is, growing fat then? So there is a third statement which is brought. And what is that third statement? That means Ravi is eating in the night. So Arthapatti resolves these contradictions of two statements. Ravi is growing fat. Ravi does not eat food throughout the day. So by bringing the third statement that Ravi eats at the night, these contradictory statements can be resolved. Similarly, in the scriptures, especially Gajendra Maharaj, Gajendra, the elephant, the king of the elephants, prays, Namo Ananta Shaktaya, Arupaya Bahurupaya. Arupaya means you don't have form, oh my lord, the absolute truth. Bahurupaya means you have many forms. So what is this? You feel it is contradiction. Arupaya, Bahurupaya. Arupaya means you don't have form, and Bahurupaya means you have many forms. So how do you resolve this contradiction of the scriptures? By using scriptural logic, which is given in the Shastras. That means he doesn't have any material form, the Lord has no material form, and the Lord has unlimited spiritual forms. Advaitam Achyutam Anadi Ananta Rupam, as Brahma Samhita Lord Brahma says. So this is how we resolve. So this is how we should understand two things, Shastra Yukti and how the contradictions in the scriptures are resolved. And what is, just mere logic, or it is called as tarka, or it is called as mental speculation. That's the difference. So that is regarding this question which was asked. I hope it is clear. So kindly raise your hand if you have a question while discussing the subject. At the same point, I can take up and we can go ahead. So there's no problem with that. So now we have been discussing about how this greed develops from this book, Shuddha Bhakti Chintamani. And we saw this devotional service is spontaneous love. In spontaneous love is vividly expressed and manifested by the inhabitants of Vrindavan. Virajantim abhivektam vrajavasi janadishu. That is what exactly is quoted. Devotional service that accords with their devotional service is called Raganuga Bhakti, or devotional service following in the wake of spontaneous loving service. So, following in that footsteps, what Bhakti is practiced is Raganuga Bhakti. We have seen this definition. The qualification to perform Vaidhi Bhakti is faith in scriptures, Shraddha, Adhikari. And the qualification to perform Raganuga Bhakti is greed to attain spontaneous devotion. We saw these two definitions, two verses from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, and both the definitions mentioned it was lobh, greed. Unlike faith, which is based on logic and reasoning, greed or covetousness is based on the heart's natural inclination. So, what is this greed? This is a spiritual greed. It is based on the heart's natural inclination. Hearing the all attractive dealings of the devotees of Vrindavan awakens in qualified devotees an inclination to develop such loving moods towards Krishna. So, by hearing about the devotees of Vrindavan, the qualified devotees now, these are the qualified devotees, develop this kind of a greed. Oh, let me also worship Krishna in this mood. So this is a kind of greed it develops in them. This attraction is no longer dependent on the ruling nature of scripture. Srila Prabhupada writes, now this is from the Nectar of Devotion. These Raganuga devotees do not follow the regulative principles of devotional service very strictly, but by spontaneous nature, they become attracted to some of the eternal devotees such as Nanda or Yashoda, and they try to follow in their footsteps spontaneously. This is given in Raganuga Bhakti, which Prabhupada discusses in chapter 15 and 16 of the Nectar of Devotion. Now, Prabhupada's statement has to be understood very carefully. They don't practice regulative principles very strictly, saying, what does it mean? The idea that persons can advance in Krishna consciousness without strictly following the regulative principle generally perplexes devotees. At the root of this confusion is a misunderstanding about what Srila Prabhupada means by not strictly following regulative principles, what this statement he's making. So we don't understand this statement of Prabhupada. So let us try to understand. Srila Prabhupada does not mean that spontaneous devotees no longer practice the basic items of devotional service such as chanting and hearing, or that they neglect or break the rules prohibiting illicit sex or intoxication. What it does mean is that for Raganuga Bhaktas, the inspiration to serve and surrender no longer comes from scriptural injunctions, but from natural attachment, rag. So their practice of following the regulative principles in one sense is more stricter compared to the Vaidhi Bhaktas. So this is most important for us to understand. In this sense, these devotees strictly follow their hearts and not the regulative principles. For that, the heart is already to major degree pure. Natural inclination of the heart is come. It's there. But because they are so spontaneously drawn to Krishna, they are naturally drawn to continue their practice of the primary limbs of devotion, doing those things that increase their association with Krishna, hearing, chanting, and remembering, among other practices. and avoiding those things that hinder their association with Krishna, sinful activity, or indulging in material pursuits. So they follow more strictly, in one sense, if you see, the primary limbs of devotion. Indeed, later we will see how Rup Goswami considers the strict following of the principal activities of regulative devotion a prerequisite for practicing spontaneous bhakti. In fact, to the more degree we practice Vaidhi Bhakti very strictly, to that degree we become more qualified to practice Raganuga Bhakti. So it is only by the practice of strictly following the Vaidhi, sadhana bhakti, do we become qualified to practice Raganuga sadhana bhakti. So this is very important for us to understand. The neglect of basics like hearing and chanting, basics that nourish one's attachment for Krishna, disqualifies one from any kind of devotional service, regulative or spontaneous. So, without, absorbing ourselves in regular hearing and chanting, what to speak of Ragana Bhakti? He will not be qualified for Vaidhi Bhakti also. This is what Srila Prabhupada means by not Prabhupada's statement. Prabhupada's statement should not be taken out of context to suit our own purpose. Just a second. There is some problem with the internet connection. Just shift. Yeah. This is what Srila Prabhupada means by not strictly following. Now, after clarifying this, when does the transition happen from Vaidhi to Raganuga Bhakti? This is a very important discussion now. The rare transition of a devotee from Vaidhi to Raganuga sadhana. This is a very rare transition which happens. Please remember, Bhakti itself is very, very rare. To come into devotional life, it's a very rare chance a jiva gets after millions of lifetimes. Still rarer is that one who practices Vaidhi sadhana bhakti and becomes qualified for Raganuga sadhana bhakti. Raganuga sadhana bhakti is also very rare. And still rarer is to attain bhava and prema. But by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, and by following the bhakti principles enunciated in the bhakti literatures, especially like Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, Bhakti Upadeshamrit, and other books, we can become qualified ultimately to come to this stage of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. So, how this transition happens, let us see. Devotees qualified to make the transition between Vaidhi and Raganuga Bhakti must be at the stage of steadiness or Nishtha and must have given up attachment to things that divert the mind from service. So, two qualifications. One is steadiness. They have attained the stage of Nishtha, and second, they have given all mundane attachments and they are more attached to Krishna. So this is the qualification required. The main qualification is in the 9 stages of bhakti which are mentioned, one should have reached the stage of Nishtha. Now here I have just, for your information, the 9 stages from Shraddha to Prema I have mentioned here. There is Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, because the Shraddha has awakened in the heart, you associate with sadhus, you have faith in sadhus, and sadhus instruct to chant Hare Krishna and follow the regulated principles. You start doing that, you begin your bhajan kriya. Unwanted things in the heart are eliminated. You start giving up, drinking tea and coffee, start following the regulated principles. Slowly, slowly, the anarth nivritti happens. And this is a long stage in spiritual life. Bhajan Kriya to Anarth Nivritti is a long stage in our spiritual life. It takes many, many years, depending on previous, each and every individual, how much he has practiced in spiritual life, we don't know in the previous lifetimes. but usually it is a long stage, you know. And after one crosses Anarth Nivritti, he comes to the stage of Nishta. And after Nishta, it is like, Anarth Nivritti is like climbing the mountain. And that too, that mountain is a steep mountain, which is almost perpendicular, 90 degrees. And once you climb the Anarth Nivritti and Anarthas are purified, the heart is almost pure. That's why Krishna tells in Sut Goswami tells, Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu, Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, Bhagavati Uttama Shloke, Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. He has attained Nishta, Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. All the Anarthas, Praya, they are almost destroyed. So Nishta is like on the mountain, you are now on the plateau. You have become steady, and now you start going down. It's like a smooth ride. So Ruchi Asakti is like that smooth ride, which ultimately takes us to Bhava and Prema. So for one to practice Raganuga Bhakti, he has to be at the stage of Nishta. This is the first qualification. Now, let us, I'm taking this picture from this is a very beautiful picture showing these 9 stages of devotion. And the metaphor is compared to the, creeper of devotion. So let us nicely try to understand this. So initially, Shraddha, the awakening of faith, happens. And just like a seed is sown in the field, similarly, the faith of Shraddha is sown in a fertile heart. And you start associating with sadhus and start practicing sadhana bhakti. Now, with this practice of sadhana bhakti, the first characteristics of sadhana bhakti is what? Kleshagni and Shubhada. Kleshagni means bhakti destroys all the miseries, and then Shubhada means bhakti bestows all auspiciousness. So all good qualities start manifesting in the devotee, and all the unwanted, kleshas, like, the different types of sins, the kinds of miseries we have, all, slowly start getting destroyed. So this is how the, just like a seed is sown and small creeper comes out with 2 leaves. So these are the 2 leaves which are compared. And with this association of sadhu, here you can see the sadhu sangha is the main trunk of this creeper, lata. Only by associating with sadhus, you further advance and you start doing bhajan kriya. Now, bhajan kriya goes through 6 stages. And this is a very elaborate topic. And Vishwanath Chakra Thakur has discussed, and this is a seminar itself. So we will not go into it. Our bhajan is not steady. It is unsteady. Why it is unsteady? Because of these 6 reasons he says. Utsamai, Ghanatarala, Vyuda Vikalpa, Vishay Sangara, Niyamakshama, and Tarangarangini. Utsamai means sometimes we are very enthusiastic in the beginning of devotional life, newfound love, we say, na? But that enthusiasm comes down. So our enthusiasm is there when there is festival, but other times, every day, that enthusiasm is not there. So this is one stage which is called as Utsamai. Ghana Tarala means sometimes our practice of devotion is very, intensified. Sometimes it is very loose. Ghana and Tarala. Viewed Vikalp means oscillating resolve. Oh, I should, give a family life and go to Vrindavan and do bhajan. Then who will look after my parents? So the intelligence oscillates between this, and he's not able to firmly, go ahead because of this viewed vikalp. Vishaya Sangara means struggling with the senses. The senses are always dragging us towards sense enjoyment. So there is a battle going on. Sangara means sangarsh. And then there is Niyamakshama. You tell that every day I will chant 32 rounds. The first day you chant, the second day you chant, third day, because of, too much bombardment of the external energy, you come to 20 rounds. Then again come down. So you're not able to follow your vows, uphold your vows. Tarangarangini means as you advance in bhakti, you start enjoying the benefits of bhakti, puja, la, pratishtha. So this is how one passes through the stage of bhajan kriya, and then anarthas. The anarthas also with the practice of bhajan kriya are slowly getting destroyed. And the anarthas are described as four kinds: dushkrita utta, sukrita utta, bhakti utta, and aparad utta. Dushkrita means because of sinful activities. I might have, before coming to devotion, committed a lot of sin. So those sins act as an obstacle. Then I might have done a lot of pious activities. Because of that, I have a lot of financial wealth, and I get carried away by this wealth and expand my business and neglect my bhakti practice. So that also can become an obstacle. Then while practicing bhakti, we might get carried away like puja la pratishta. And then while practicing bhakti, we might commit offenses, aparads. And then there is this stage after one crosses this anarth nivriti, again in the association of sadhus, there are these 5 obstacles which we have to cross in order to, come to the stage of Nishtha. The last 5 obstacles before Nishtha. So now we'll be discussing what are these 5 obstacles which we have to cross before coming to the stage of Nishtha. What are the symptoms of one on the stage of Nishtha? So any questions again regarding that chart, what we discussed? If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. We can take it up. Any questions, any clarifications? Any questions? Okay. So Nishtha has this 5 obstacles, and one who has crossed over these 5 obstacles, he is actually on the stage of Nishtha. See, because why we are discussing this is because it is said that to practice Raganuga Bhakti, one should be at the stage of Nishtha. Now, what are the 5 obstacles in Nishtha if we understand? And one who has crossed these 5 obstacles, he is said to be in the stage of Nishtha. So the 5 obstacles are laya, sleep, vikshepa, distraction, apratipatti, indifference or disinterest in spiritual topics, kashaya, tendency towards bad habits, rasa aswada, taste for material enjoyment. So these look very similar to some Ayurvedic terminologies, especially laya and kashaya. You know, these are there is in Ayurveda medicine there is something called as Ayurveda preparations can be done in the form of bhasma, in the form of laya, in the form of kashaya. Means the Ayurvedic herbs are boiled and then they are filtered and they are given in the form of kashaya. They are also given in the form of laya also. Laya means it's like in the form of a paste. You know, so like that, many such things are there. So they look very similar to these terminologies, especially laya and kashaya. So let us see what these terms are. Okay. Laya refers to the tendency to sleep during kirtan, shravan, and smaran, japa, in order of increasing tendency. So, tendency to sleep in kirtan is less, and tendency to sleep in shravan is more, and the more or the most is in japa. So, if you have any tendency to sleep in japa or in shravan, that is while hearing a Bhagavatam class or a Bhagavad Gita class, then you can understand you are under the effect of laya. Kirtan usually don't I have not seen anyone sleep because Kirtan is very ecstatic and all the devotees are singing for the Lord in the temple and they are dancing. So, it is difficult, in Kirtan, but it is possible. Hearing the nice Kirtan, somebody in the backside might nicely, peacefully doze off also. While hearing Srimad Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam class, it is observed that the devotees sometimes doze off. That is because of laya. I heard once that, you know, a speaker who was speaking the Bhagavatam class, while speaking, he went to sleep. It's, very difficult. Somebody who's speaking, to going to sleep. The same devotee who is, hearing the Bhagavatam class, he might go to sleep hearing the class, but when the prasad time comes, he'll not go to sleep. So it is difficult in the Anishtita Bhajan Kriya stage to become free from this laya. And the order is in increasing. The most sleeping tendency comes in Japa, next in Shravan, and then Kirtan. This is what is called as laya. Vikshepa. Vikshepa refers to distraction towards mundane topics while performing service. Example, gossiping while doing japa. Now, today, because of internet and mobile, we are using this technology for having classes also. But the tendency of the mind to become distracted is very powerful. Especially, it is my observation not only in these online classes, but when the class is going on live, the devotees are sitting in front. Uh, the tendency is because there is a habit of constantly looking at your messages, so even while hearing, you just keep on scrolling and looking into the messages. So this is a kind of distraction, which is a symptom of that one who has not attained this stage of Nishtha. It is an obstacle for us. So we should be very careful in our practice of Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti that we avoid the distractions, especially in the morning time. We should keep our mobile separately and sit and chant in one place, in the association of devotees or in front of the deities or in the front of pictures or in front of Tulsi Marani. So that, this age is an age of mass distraction, and we should be very, very careful about it. And a person who is in the stage of Nishtana, he will not get distracted. His attraction to Krishna Katha is so much that even if there is some distraction, his mind will not get diverted in that direction. So this is a second obstacle. The third is apratipatti. Refers to occasional inability to perform kirtan, etc., in spite of the absence of laya and vikshepa. So there is no sleep, you know, there's no distraction. But today, no, my mood is I don't want to chant. I get up in the morning, 5 o'clock, and sit with all devotees chant. Today I'm not feeling like chanting, you know. So there is inability to perform your chanting because you don't have that taste. In the stage of Nishtha, one is very steady in his practice. He's rock solid, in his practices. So that is, one of the qualities of one who is in Nishtha. But because of this apratipatti, there is inability, oh, I don't want to do it today. Maybe I'll do it later on. So like that, these kind of tendencies of the mind, the moods, are because of the effects of the modes of passion and ignorance. But at the stage of Nishtha, one is more situated in the mode of goodness. Kashaya means a tendency to indulge in anger, greed, pride, etc. due to past bad habit. So Kashaya is when, things go wrong, you might become angry at the devotee, or you might be too much greedy for eating too much prasad, and you might have pride in giving lectures. So all these tendencies which are there in the heart because of the mode of passion and ignorance, these are called as Kashaya. And Ras Aswad refers to inability to absorb the mind in Kirtan if one gets the opportunity for material sense pleasure. Ras Aswad means the mind is taking pleasure still in sense objects. Ras Aswadan. So there is material, sense pleasure. Oh, there is, today this sannyasi is giving a lecture in Vrindavan. We have gone for Vrindavan Parikrama, and this lecture is there. And there is also this, uh, famous sweet mart in Govardhan, where there is, what is it called? Son Papadi. Very famous Son Papadi is there, the Govardhan, in Govardhan. And there you get also, nice dokla and samosa. So let us go and have this dokla and samosa instead of going for the lecture. So still there is tendency for material sense pleasure, So even in the midst of the kirtan, we are thinking, okay, let us go to the Govinda restaurant and have something. So these are the 5 obstacles to attainment of Nishtha. One who is free from these 5 should be understood that he is on the stage of Nishtha. After the stage of Anarth Nivritti, when these obstacles are almost completely destroyed, one achieves steadiness. Thus, the symptom of Nishtha is the absence of the above mentioned obstacles. These 5 obstacles, prove that somebody is on the stage of Nishtha. So, first qualification of a Raganuga Bhakta is he has to be in the stage of Nishtha. So, what are the symptoms that one is on the stage of Nishtha? We have discussed now. One who understands this section will not be misled by the semblance of greed, whether in themselves or in others. So there is greed and there is a semblance of greed. Looks like greed, but it is not real greed. So whether I have that kind of greed to follow the Vrajvasis, I can understand if I see, whether I have these 5 symptoms. And if others also have this greed, whether he's steady in his practice, you can see that. So everything can be understood by Lakshana, symptoms. Srila Prabhupada writes, now this is again from Nectar of Devotion, Prabhupada. We must always remember, however, that such eagerness, and this is also greed, to follow in the footsteps of the denizens of Vraja, Vrindavan, is not possible unless one is freed from material contamination. In the practice of devotional service, there is a stage called as Anartha Nivritti, in which all material contaminations gradually disappears. Sometimes persons are found to be imitating such devotional love before they have become free from anarthas, unwanted habits. So in the Nectar of Devotion, chapter 16, Prabhupada, when discussing Raganuga Bhakti, he is mentioning. So one should have crossed Anarth Nivritti. That means one should have reached the stage of Nishtha. That's what Prabhupada is saying. Now we discussed how one of the most important criterias for coming to the stage of Raganuga Bhakti is Nishtha. So again, now for us as Vaidhi Sadhaka Bhaktas, or practically you can say for me at least, it is an impetus now that we should practice Vaidhi Bhakti and try to attain the stage of Nishtha, and then qualification will come with the particular stage we reach. So this is why we should discuss these topics which Srila Prabhupada himself has given in Nectar of Devotion. So any questions regarding these 5 stages, 5 obstacles in the stage of Nishtha, which we discussed now? Any questions, any clarifications? Okay, so we will now look into a little more details of a mentality of a person who is at the stage of Nishtha. Mentality of a devotee on Nishtha to take up Raganuga sadhana. So what is his mentality? Before continuing the study of Raganuga Bhakti, this section introduces the mentality of those eligible to take up. This is again from that chapter itself. Devotees qualified. Now this we had referred to it at the stage of, they should be at the stage of Nishtha, and I went into the discussion of Madhurya Kadamni, where what are the symptoms of one who is at the stage of Nishtha is mentioned. So this I have discussed. This one particular statement I discussed quite elaborately. Then further, what about Nishtha? This full surrender to the practice and spreading of Krishna consciousness often leaves devotees open to criticism from mundane moralist and religionist, but devotees on the platform of Nishtha have already surpassed this mundane sense of obligation. So devotees who are at the stage of Nishtha, one is their surrender is very deep, their practices are very deep, and they are spreading the Krishna conscious movement. They are doing prachar also. And people might criticize, the family member might criticize, outside people might criticize, oh, you have left your duties of your parents and you're doing this, it is not proper. All these kind of criticisms, he is beyond all this. He is not going to get diverted. They are critics, blind to the true way of transcendentalist, accuse devotees of ingratitude towards family, country, and the great men and women who have sacrificed their lives for humanity. So these critics might, tell, oh, you people, you are not ready to sacrifice your life for the country, you know, and they might criticize. But the real transcendentalist, they are not going to, budge an inch from their surrender, from their practice to attain Vraj Bhakti. Before continuing with the study of Ragamanaga Sakti, this section introduces the mentality of those eligible to take it up. What is their mental state? Oh, sorry, this again, for some reason, has come up. Okay, that slide twice. I think for some reason twice it is put up. I'll delete it. Okay, yeah. Such ingratitude, they say, these are the critics, is tantamount to sin, and sin certainly impedes any person's search for truth. So sometimes, especially devotees who join the ashram, the parents and the relatives may come, oh, you have not doing your duties, and this is sin, and how such a sinful person can be religionist. So these kind of accusations they might make. While politely braving such criticisms, devotees at the stage of steadiness remains unperturbed, fixed in the conviction that originally brought them to Krishna's lotus feet, that souls surrendered to Krishna are free from all material obligations and purified of any sin incurred as a consequence of their surrender. Hmm? Dev Rishi Bhutapna Rininam Pitrinam, that verse. Yo Mukunda Sharanya Sharanyam. So this is the verse it is being referred. In this way, such devotees march resolutely forward, serving the Lord as they desire. Not only are study devotees free from mundane transgressions, they are also free from accidental sins performed while engaged in devotional service. So, in the stage of our practice of devotional service, especially Vaidhi Bhakti, because of the anarthas which are there in the heart, there is some tendency to commit accidental sins. And Krishna, definitely seeing the sincerity of the devotee, he overlooks them and he purifies them. But the tendency to commit accidental sins is there. But those who are at the platform of Nishta, they are free from these accidental sins because they are very steady in their practice of devotional service. They are very firm also. These devotees have given up all material engagements in order to take full shelter of Lord Hari's lotus feet and thus very dear to him. Seated in everyone's heart, Krishna at once takes away the reactions to sins committed by such surrendered souls. This is again from that paragraph only. Knowledge of these truths makes devotees who are seriously committed to Krishna consciousness indifferent to worldly opinions and unmoved by the urges of their own attachments. So, two mentalities are reflecting here in one who is qualified to practice Ragana Bhakti. He is indifferent to worldly opinions. Secondly, he is not dictated by the attachments to this world. He doesn't come under the urges of his own attachments. You know, he might get attached to his car, or he might get attached to his laptop, or he might get attached to his mobile phone, or attachment to many other things, pujala pratishtha, attachment to following. So he is not having these attachments. His attachment is more firm to the lotus feet of Krishna. So this is the mentality. These sites are set on perfections. Sorry, their sights are set on perfection beyond the understanding of worldly people, a perfection rarely achieved even by great souls. Now, here I would like to make a point. Those devotees who are in ISKCON, who have started practicing bhakti, especially Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, they are the most fortunate, even compared to the sannyasis in the other sampradayas, apart from the Madhva Gaudi sampradaya, in the Madhva sampradaya or the Sri sampradaya or the Kumar sampradaya. These sannyasis in the other sampradayas, they have attained the renounced order of life. Their heart is pure. They are very firm in their, sannyas ashram, and they have attained a kind of prema. But that prema will lead them to Vaikuntha. But the sadhakas who have started doing bhakti, who are doing their bhajan, they are far, far superior. Even though their hearts are not yet purified, they are far, far superior to the sannyasis in the other sampradaya. Now, please take this statement don't take it out of context. Just to, understand the glory of what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has given. Because this devotee who has taken up to Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, if he practices Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti meticulously, ultimately he will come to the stage of Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti and then Bhava Bhakti and Prema Bhakti and attain Golok Vrindavan, which is very, very rare. Whereas the sannyasis in the other sampradaya, they might take many lifetimes to perfect and go to the spiritual world. And even if they go to the spiritual world, they can go only to Vaikuntha, where there is Shanta and Dasiras. And that too in awe and reverence. That I am Das and Narayan is my Swami and Prabhu. So there is no intimacy. But this Vraj Bhakti, where this pure spontaneous love, where Krishna is not considered God, this bhakti is given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And Vaidhi sadhakas, even though not purified, can ultimately attain it, and they are far, far superior to any others compared to the other sampradaya. Now, what to speak of somebody is on the stage of Nishtha? They are now fixed in attaining their perfection. Once a devotee reaches the stage of Nishtha, practically, his path is cleared to attain perfection. He will immediately, swiftly, smoothly, like climbing down the mountain. If you're cycling, you're climbing up the mountain, it's quite difficult. But once you climb the mountain and then the other side of the mountain is like going smooth. So, Ruchi, Asati, Bhava, it's a very smooth journey. So those who come to the stage of Nishtha, they attain this rare perfection that is not even achieved by great souls like the demigods and even Lord Brahma also. Brahmara Durlabha, Krishna Prem, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give. Undaunted and confident in the Lord's affectionate shelter, they pray that the distance between themselves and ecstatic devotion, this is in the perfected stage of the Vrajvasis, will soon vanish. So they pray like this. This is the verse which is spoken by again Rupa Goswami in Stavamala. Prachinanam bhajanam atulam dushkaram shrunato me नैर्याशेन ज्वलति हृदयं भक्तिलेशास्य विश्वदृचिं मगहरं तव कर्ण्यकारुण्यवीचिन् आशाबिन्दुक्षितम् इदम् उपेति antare hanta shaitam. I am too weak and too lazy to do even the smallest devotional service. So when I hear of the peerless and the difficult to perform services performed by the great devotees in ancient times, Prachinanam Bhajatam Bhajananam Atulam Dushkaram. Dushkaram means which is very difficult. Shunvato me, when I hear this, Nairyashena Jwalati Hridayam. My heart burns with despair. Oh, how will I perform this devotion? O Lord, killer of Agasura, Agahara. When I hear the waves of your mercy splash everyone from demigod Brahma down to the most insignificant creature, Tava Akarya Karuna Karuna Vichim. Akarnya means to hear, Karuna means mercy, Vichim means when I hear this, what happens? My heart is sprinkled with a cooling drop of hope. Asha Bindu Shitam Idam Upeti Antara Hanta Shaitam. So these are the kind of prayers these devotees pray, that I will also somehow the Lord will bestow, Asha, hope that, Krishna will bestow this, mercy to me and purify my heart so that I become qualified to practice Raganuga Bhakti. Such is the mentality of practicing devotees eligible to move on from regulative to spontaneous devotion. By practicing regulative devotional service, devotees gradually purify their hearts of the unwanted things. This is anarth nivriti, and achieve steadiness. A steadiness not only in their physical conduct, but in their words and mental activities. So this Nishta is found in Sharir, Man and Vacha at three levels, at all three levels. They are studying their physical activities, like getting up early in the morning, practicing the devotion. They are studying their control of mind and senses, and they are studying their speech also. Their speech also becomes very, very steady, although not yet free from impurities. Now, please remember, even at the stage of Nishtha, there are some impurities, but most of them are destroyed, as the verse says, Nashta Prayeshu Abhadreshu. But some impurities still remain. The Papa and Punyas almost, Prabhupada says, almost 90% destroyed. But there are some types of, impurities in the form of apradhs which stay. They stay even up till the stage of bhava. These devotees master their mind and senses, are no longer hostage to residual desires or bad habits. So they, at the stage of Nishtha, one has complete control over the mind and senses. In fact, the stage of Nishtha is the stage of a Sthita Pragya stage, where one is a self-realized soul. The Sthita Pragya stage symptoms are given in the Bhagavad Gita 2.55 to 2.72. Steady devotees diligently study Srimad Bhagavatam and respectfully hear of the Lord's many incarnations. So they hear about Vaman Leela, Narsimha Leela, but when they read of Krishna's pastimes in Vrindavan, they are especially intrigued. They are most absorbed in it. They think Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but in Vrindavan, his behavior is charmingly human-like. Simply to hear Srila Prabhupada discourse on this phenomena, these devotees eagerly read his Krishna book, where they become struck by Krishna's sweetness and charm and by the innocent love of the Vrajvasis. So this is how, a narration is given by Shivram Swami of how actually these things are happening. Okay, again, there's a question here. Question is it possible that a devotee practicing sadhana bhakti reaches to bhava bhakti, where there is a very strong practice of sadhana along with Vatsalya Sambandh identified by the Lord? Now, we will come to this question little bit after the discussion, firstly. And secondly, there is elaborate discussion which will be happening in the next week when we discuss, the qualification to practice Raganuga Bhakti. That time also your question, if it is not answered, please that time also ask. But here I would like to just clarify that if a devotee is practicing sadhana bhakti, firstly he is practicing Vaidhi sadhana bhakti. And from Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, you cannot directly go to bhava bhakti. From Vaidhi sadhana bhakti, one comes to Raganuga sadhana bhakti. And from Raganuga sadhana bhakti, further, one reaches the stage of, sadhya, that is bhava bhakti, and from bhava prema bhakti. Now we are discussing about Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti, and we are seeing how from Vaidhi one becomes qualified to practice Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. And we saw in the discussions before few slides that one should have reached the stage of Nishtha. So we should see whether we have reached the stage of Nishtha first, whether we have these 5 obstacles. So these are very important for us to understand, and the subject is quite elaborately discussed in Rup Goswami's book, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and other literatures. So this is right now my answer, but further many points will come up in today's discussion, which we are continuing, and also uh, next Saturday, we will be going more into this greed, whether we have that greed to practice sadhana, Raganuga Bhakti, and all these other kinds of imaginations. We can have some mental imaginations that maybe I'm having a relationship with the Lord in this mood. These can be sometimes imaginations, and how to understand that quite in detail, Shivram Swami himself has discussed. So we will be discussing that at that time, and we will see that these doubts are cleared. So there is another question. What about those devotees who accidentally came in contact with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and attained ecstatic love of Godhead? Interesting question. Uh, Mahaprabhu, when he came in this world, he whoever came in contact with him directly from Shraddha, he within no time, maybe in fractions of second or nanoseconds, he attained prema, especially in the South India tour, if you see, and not only attained prema, those who came in touch with that devotee whom Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had given darshan, even they, when they had their darshan of that devotee, they also directly from Shraddha, they attained prema and went back to the spiritual world. In fact, the entire South India was liberated. That was Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy, that he gave this prema, directly infused this prema in the heart of anyone who came in touch with him, because he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But after Chaitanya Mahaprabhu left, those jivas who become qualified to take up bhakti, they have to go through these stages of sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti, and prema bhakti to attain the highest ecstatic love of Godhead. In fact, they have to go through these stages of Shraddha, Sadhu Sangha, Bhajan Kriya, Anarth Nivriti, Nishtha, Ruchi, Asakti, Bhava, and Prem. That is those who come after, Mahaprabhu has left and he has wound up his pastimes. So, but still, it's not that, oh, gosh, how great would it have been that I would have also born when Mahaprabhu was born, I would have attained directly his darshan and attained prema and went back to Godhead. But we are fortunate because devotees have been given, Vaishnava Acharyas have given us the perfect, uh, roadmap, you can say, of how we can attain these higher stages by practicing bhakti. What are the obstacles and how we can cross over these obstacles and go to the higher stages. Especially the acharyas like Rupa Goswami and Vishwanath Chakra Thakur and Srila Prabhupada also in his books has very elaborately discussed this in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu as well as even in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Okay. There's one question. Maybe they had done a lot of bhakti in their early lives, so they could have darshan of Mahaprabhu. There were, many kinds of personalities who were there 500 years back. Some were the eternal associates of the Lord who, came along with the Lord to participate in his pastimes. The others were, those according to their karma who were born 500 years back, and they had the fortune to participate and have darshan of Mahaprabhu or his associates. What to speak of Mahaprabhu? Even his associates like Nityanand Prabhu, Advaita Acharya, and all others, There are many others who are all associates. They were, you know, each one of them was qualified to even deliver one universe. Even having their darshan, devotees were getting liberated and getting Krishna prem. So, we don't know, whether they practiced bhakti in early lives. They were some were eternal associates, some were, based on their karma born at that time, 500 years back. So here again, we are coming to a little bit discussion of how this happens, uh, that we become attracted to Krishna's sweetness and Krishna's charmness and innocence in Braj Bhakti. They repeatedly hear Srila Prabhupada extol the unparalleled loving service of the Vrajvasis in passages such as Uddhav was a great friend of Krishna's, the direct student of Brahaspati, very intelligent and highly qualified. Krishna, being a loving friend of Uddhav's, wanted to send him to Vrindavan just to study the highly elevated ecstatic devotional service practice there, to learn from the gopis and the other residents of Vrindavan how to love Krishna to the highest degree. So Uddhav was not only given message by Krishna, but Krishna wanted to show Uddhav what is, Braj Bhakti. So Uddhav was also, new to Vraj Bhakti. He did not know what is Vraj Bhakti. So he became a student when he went to Vrindavan and he learned about Vraj Bhakti from the Vrajvasis. So he became a student, although Uddhav was highly qualified and he used to sometimes, as a minister, even give counsel to Krishna. He thought he's most intimate there. But then when he saw the Vrajvasis, uh, uh, he understood their mood. He understood what kind of bhakti they are and what elevated bhakti they practice. So here is another question. Can we consider all Brajvas are Uttam Adhikari level? Now, the term Uttam Adhikari has, different meanings in different context. Especially when we study the Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu, the Sadhana Bhakti, that time we quite elaborately discuss this term, and especially even in Nectar of Instruction. Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam refers to those who are entering the school of Bhakti. Like somebody who's entering IIT, he has scored the 10th rank. Somebody has scored the 100th rank. Somebody has scored 1000th rank. All three are qualified to enter IIT because the breakup of the rank is maybe 1500. But all three, students who are qualified to enter IIT are not at the same level. The one who has scored the 10th rank is highly intelligent. So he will excel in IIT and quickly, understand the subject and, might pass with good rank and ultimately become successful. So similarly, Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttam, these terminologies have different meanings and different context. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Uttam Adhikari is a Mahabhagavat who is at the stage of Bhava and Prema. But the Vrajvasis of Vrindavan, they are at perfected stage of Prema. They don't come in the Uttam Adhikari category, in fact. In Prema, there are higher stages, which are not a discussion for sadhakas here, and very rarely it is discussed. So there is higher stages in Prema, and that is Siddha Bhaktas. They are called as Siddha Bhaktas. So they don't come under this category of Uttam Adhikaris at all. This is first thing to be understood. I hope it is clear, Prabhuji. Satyanarayan Satyavrat Prabhuji, na? Is it clear? You can unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. That means they are beyond these adhikari levels.
Yes. These adhikaris qualification is here only in the material world.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you for clarification, Prabhu.
Yeah. Of course, this terminology has different meanings, and we'll have to see. There is, we have to see the context. Very important it is. We have to see the context. And this is an elaborate subject, but here just briefly I just explained.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So kindly raise your hand and then type it so that I understand that there is something typed and I can type up the question. So we are still now discussing about how, those who are qualified for Raganu Bhakti, how they hear about Krishna's pastimes, how they feel when they hear Krishna's pastimes. Krishna, being a loving friend of Uddhava, wanted to teach. This we read. It was Krishna's special flavor. So Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, chapter 46. So when they hear, especially from Krishna book, what is their mood? Those who are at the stage of Nishtha, they develop that intense greed, to attain that mood. Whereas we remember this famous pastime when Srila Prabhupada was in New Vrindavan, it was Janmashtami, and everyone was fasting. In fact, his sannyasis also was, many of his sannyasis were there, were fasting. And Prabhupada, uh, late in the night, maybe 9 o'clock or 9:30, he told everyone to assemble and told the devotees to read Krishna book. And Prabhupada was fully absorbed in hearing the Krishna book, Krishna's pastimes of killing the asuras. And Prabhupada was very ecstatic and is clapping his hands. And the reading went on from 9 to 10. Devotees thought that Prabhupada would stop, and then they were also tired because they were fasting. They wanted to move. Prabhupada said, continue. So from 10 o'clock, it went to 11 o'clock. And many of the devotees, even the sannyasis, were slowly dozing because, they were hungry and they were fasting throughout the day. Prabhupada was ecstatic. And then the discussion went on till 11:30, 11:45. Ultimately, it was 12 o'clock, Janmashtami. Now Prabhupada said, you can go do the arti and take prasadam. So Prabhupada was simply absorbed in, Vraj Leela of the Vrajvasis. So we can see that this kind of eagerness is there in those who are in the stage of Nishtha and who have a lot of taste for hearing Bhagavatam, studying Srila Prabhupada's books, and they derive newer and newer understanding. Sometimes such devotees discuss the concept of Raj Bhakti with their peers and hear about another's favorite pastimes. Everyone has his own favorite pastimes. They discuss these concepts. We are discussing these concepts of Raj Bhakti. At other times, they study the nectar of devotion to increase their devotional insight. Nectar of Devotion is the most important book in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. In fact, Nectar of Devotion and Chaitanya Charitamrita are at the same platform. They are at the PhD level platform. Prabhupada, right in 1971, gave us Nectar of Devotion. As far as I remember, it's 1971, I think. And Prabhupada, could not write an elaborate commentary that time because Nectar of Devotion had 2,172 verses. But Prabhupada gave a summary study because he wanted to give his devotees the whole science of bhakti so that they can study it and practice it to all his devotees, to his flourishing Hare Krishna movement. And Prabhupada, in a lecture, a 10-minute lecture he delivered after publishing this book, Nectar of Devotion. And he says, now I am giving you a summary study. Please study this book once, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, 6 times, and then you'll start understanding the science of bhakti. So this Nectar of Devotion book has to be repeatedly studied by sadhakas to increase their devotional insight. They read Chaitanya Charitamrita with the fresh understanding of Lord's teachings and pastimes. I told you, these two books are very important for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. While listening to Srila Prabhupada lectures, they repeatedly hear him summarize Lord Chaitanya's teachings in a way that gives them new perspectives in Krishna consciousness. So this is what is happening for one who is in Nishtha. He's getting newer and newer understandings of the subject and the pastimes from different angles. And then this becomes his, favorite verse. Aradhya Bhagavan Vrajesh Tanayas Tadhama Vrindavanam Ramya Kachita Upasana Vrajavadu Varge Naya Kalpita Srimat Bhagavatam Pramanam Amalam Prema Pumarto Mahan Shri Chaitanya Mahaprabhur Matamidam Tatradarana Paraha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, the son of Nanda Maharaj, is to be worshipped along with his transcendental abode Vrindavan. Aradhya, Aradhya means worshipable. Bhagwan, who is that? Vrajesh Tanayas, one who is the son of Nanda Maharaj. And worshipable is his abode Vrindavan. And in what mood, what form of worship should we do? Ramya Kachita Upasana Vrajvadu Vargena Ya Kalpita. The most pleasing form of worship is for the Lord is that which is performed by the gopis of Vrindavan. So this reveals that the Gaudiya Vaishnavas have been given Rag Bhakti especially to follow in the footsteps of the gopis of Vrindavan. That is the Madhurya Ras. That is the beauty of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has come to give this. Although Vatsalya, Dasya and Sakya is there, those who are attracted even in the Gaudiya line uh, is rare and is commendable, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu especially gave this Ramya Kachitopasana. And where you will find this kind of worship done by the Vrajvadus, you will find it in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Srimad Bhagavatam is the spotless authority on everything, and pure love of God is the ultimate goal of for all men. Pramanam Amalam. The how the Vraj Gopis worship Krishna is mentioned in the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is Amal Pranan. It is Amalam Puranam, and it is the highest Praman, the highest evidence. And the ultimate goal is to attain prema. These statements for which we have the highest regard are the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu Matamidam. Then what is the need of any other mata? So that is the point here being made. The vast majority of these devotees acknowledge the wonder and uniqueness of Krishna's pastimes in Vraj, but are not yet moved to do more than hear about or discuss them. So they hear and discuss. Still, they discuss them happily in the limited scope of reverential, regulative devotion. So, while practicing Vaidhi Bhakti, also we hear about Krishna's pastimes, but still that greed has not yet developed. Only later do they acquire inspiration to intensify their relationship with Vraj Bhakti. But a few devotees react differently. They do not remain neutral. Heartfelt desire moves them when they hear Krishna's pastimes. They think, I would also like to love and serve Krishna like the Vrajvasis. So these are already on the stage of Nishtha, and that's why they feel like that. Although weak at first, this desire gains strength in contact with advanced devotees who explain Krishna consciousness in relation to Vraj Bhakti. So the advanced devotees who explain, Vraj Bhakti, they gain strength from them. Krishna Tattva, Bhakti Tattva, Prema Tattva Sar, Bhava Tattva, Rasa Tattva, Leela Tattva are. So all these tattvas, they nicely explain them. Finally, these steady devotees, now mark the point. Who are these? They are the steady devotees who have attained Nishtha. Now that question was asked, whether our sambandha with the deities is in which rasa. Firstly, we have to attain steady devotion. They are drawn to Vraj Bhakti. They reveal their minds to their spiritual masters. So this Raganuga Bhakti just cannot be practiced because I feel that I have lobha or I have developed greed or I am at the stage of Nishtha. It has to be verified by the spiritual masters. These devotees are the same servants as before, and they continue to perform the same duties, but their mood changes. They now feel a genuine desire to achieve perfection of the Vrajvasis, and the description of the Vrajvasi service to Krishna dominate their hearts and minds. Their spiritual masters are pleased to hear of their disciples' interest because gurus know well the good judgment, sincerity, and advancement of their disciples. So, the disciples have to be in close touch with the spiritual master, where the spiritual master uses his own judgment to see whether the disciple is sincere and whether he has attained that Nishtha stage, advancement, in order to take up Raganuga Sadhana Bhakti. gurus and disciples are intimate associates in Srila Prabhupada's service. Still, the spiritual masters examine their disciples with questions and arguments in order to establish which disciples have real qualification for spontaneous bhakti. So we should, pass this test even from the spiritual master to see whether the spiritual master approves that whether now you are qualified for, Raganuga Bhakti. When the gurus are satisfied that particular disciples have this qualification, they give them suitable instructions. Now, it is very, very important here to understand that Raganuga Bhakti is not just practiced by reading the Shastra from Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu. No, a personal guidance is required. In fact, doctors who are experienced in operation, when a new doctor who has also done his, double graduation, he still has to become a trainer or apprentice, in this experienced doctor to learn the intricacies of these operations. So then what to speak about, in spiritual practices. So here there is one question. So let us take this question. Yes, Mataji. You can unmute yourself. Yes, Mataji, what's your question?
Hare Krishna.
Yes, Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, I wanted to know when you're not initiated, and for example, you just said that spiritual master have to examine you, like, I mean, where do you stand in your devotional service? So in that case, when you are not initiated, and for example, you're very inclined, like for example, I'm personally very inclined towards Bhakti Rasamrit Maharaj, but he is not initiating anybody. So in this case, is it like you have to take a spiritual master, or how is it? How do you go about it?
Okay. So let us not go into the personal details, but I'll give a general answer. Firstly, initiation, the concept of initiation or diksha, what is called, has to be very, very clearly understood. Diksha is not just where the spiritual master initiates a disciple and then you become a disciple. Diksha is, Sanatan Goswami defines Diksha as Divyam Jnanam Dadati. I don't remember the verse, it is there in Hare Bhakti Vilas. Diksha is Divyam Jnanam. Divyam Jnanam means when one gets transcendental knowledge about devotion. So we all have experienced that, we come in Krishna conscious touch when we come through the 7-day Bhagavad Gita course or the 6-day Bhagavad Gita course, and we start hearing the Bhagavad Gita course and we understand the fundamentals of Bhagavad Gita and we are inclined now to take up devotion. And in the association of these devotees, we start practicing our spiritual life. So that is also in one sense a diksha. So there are different levels of dikshas. So I will now explain these 3 different levels. The first one is called as the Shramana Guru. The Shraman Guru is from whom you are hearing transcendental knowledge. Somebody who is giving the 7-day Bhagavad Gita course, by which you take up spiritual practices. Later on, as you take up spiritual practice, you need guidance, and you approach an advanced devotee who is very steady in his practice, to whom you are able to understand the bhakti literatures, whom you feel can guide you in spiritual life. So he's giving you shiksha on how to practice spiritual life and how to further progress in spiritual life. So they are called as the shiksha gurus in one sense, or in ISKCON terminology, shiksha guru is also a Mahabhagavat, and we don't find such Mahabhagavats as our counselors. Basically, they are also quite steadily practicing for many years, and they help the other devotees to also come up in spiritual life. So basically, the terminology used is the Shiksha Gurus in one sense. But Shiksha Guru, as I was mentioning, is also a Mahabhagavat. He's at the Uttamadhikari platform on Bhava or Prema stage. And then there is the Diksha Guru also. So the Diksha Guru gives actual initiation and also he establishes the connection between the disciple and the spiritual master. The Guru and Krishna. Between the disciple and Krishna. Between the disciple and Krishna, he establishes the connection. So Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, the first Anga, Ado Guru Pad Ashraya. First, we should take the shelter of the spiritual master. Now, in Srila Prabhupada's case, let us try to understand Srila Prabhupada's case and then evaluate our case. Srila Prabhupada first met Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, and you remember that conversation which happened in Ultadanga, where Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ordered Prabhupada to preach, Mahaprabhu's message in the Western world. And Prabhupada had an argument, how our country is not independent, how can we, preach, take this mission. And Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati completely defeated Prabhupada. Prabhupada says that in my heart, I accepted him as my spiritual master. Later on, Srila Prabhupada started taking instructions from Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Prabhupada was not initiated when, in 1922 he first met. But it is only 1933, that is after a span of 11 years. In between, Prabhupada rarely met, Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur, and he took instructions from him. He was practicing, as other Gaudiya Math devotees and were doing. But it is only at 11 years, after 11 years in 1933, he got initiated from Bhakti Siddhanta Thakur. So his Shiksha Guru itself became a Diksha Guru. So now that is ideal. That is the most ideal what Srila Prabhupada says in Chaitanya Charitamrita. But if, the Siksha Guru is not at the level of Diksha Guru, that is a sannyasi, then we can take initiation from other Diksha Gurus and we can have Shiksha Gurus, as many as we want. So the most important criteria is that one has to take initiation, because initiation is a process and it is at different levels we have to see. One is when we heard about Krishna consciousness through the Bhagavad Gita course, we got that transcendental knowledge by which we took up the process. And now many devotees are there who are still not initiated by a spiritual master, but they are practicing Krishna consciousness and they are able to give up their bad habits. So it's not that, because initiation has not happened, that whatever practices they are doing, they are not getting the fruit. They are getting the fruits, but definitely at a certain stage in our spiritual life, we should take, initiation from a bona fide Diksha Guru to get connected to the parampara. Through the parampara, when we get connected, we connect to Krishna. So Diksha is certainly important at certain stage in our spiritual life to strengthen our faith and to, further advance in spiritual life. Of course, we might take Diksha from a spiritual master whom we might not be regularly in contact. But if we have a Shiksha Guru whom we are in regularly contact, the Shiksha Guru and Diksha Guru have same roles ultimately, that they take the disciple towards Krishna. So these are some of the understandings which we should have. Quite elaborately, you can refer the Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Leela. The first chapter discusses quite a lot in the purports of Srila Prabhupada. All this explanation is there. Is it okay? Yeah. So we are already running out of time. It is, because of this question, somehow I went a little late, 10 minutes. Sorry for that. So we have been discussing, about these qualifications of one who has greed. We found the first thing is that greed, the first qualification is one has to be in the stage of Nishtha. What are the symptoms of Nishtha we saw? quite elaborately what is the mentality of such a person. He's indifferent to critics, and how slowly now he is, he's taking up to Raganuga Bhakti. The whole process in the form of a storyline has been given by Shivram Swami, we saw. In the next week's class, we will see more into that greed, whether we possess that actual greed or no. So that we will see in the next class, coming class, about uh, whether we have that greed. And after discussing that, then we will go into what are the limbs of practicing Raganuga Bhakti. As there were limbs for practicing Sadhana Bhakti, Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, there are the 64 limbs. There are some limbs which the Raganuga Sadhana Bhakta has to perform. And what are those limbs? We will see. And then there are different types of Raganuga Bhakti, which we will see. That will end up the discussion on Raganuga Bhakti. Of course, we will be also discussing from other scriptures more in detail about Raganuga Bhakti in the coming sessions. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srila Rupa Goswami Pad ki jai. Bhakti Rasamrit Sindhu ki jai. Hare Krishna. Any other questions, even if you have later on, you can record and send it on the WhatsApp, and I'll try to reply. Hare Krishna.